The veteran soldier woke up on the floor. He appeared very painful, exhausted. However, when he regained his senses, the very generous veteran climbed onto the iron bed and chair and encouraged himself. Just a moment later, the guy was neatly dressed in the yellow uniform of a fast food salesman. This is the job he found after being discharged from the army, but it seems that Jack is not really used to working. He is complained by customers for taking the wrong seasoning, but he is not angry because of that. He apologized and complied with the requirements that the customer just said during the break. The big veteran checked his phone and informed the Global Security Department that he wanted to be transferred to Pakistan. However, this unit flatly refused Jack's request because he was a veteran with such a history of brain injury that he was not suitable for the battlefield. Despite the paint spray explaining that his health is normal and that he himself has submitted a health record to the Global Security Agency, the unit still requires the veteran to have a confirmation from the commanding officer. In fact, the pitcher contacted the recruiting party 12 times but was rejected. The Global Security Agency also told the veteran that they could not help him without a recommendation from his former unit and that the rotation would end next Wednesday. Bored of not being able to return to the battlefield, he returned home and vented his anger on the logs. He suddenly received a phone call from his former captain and he quickly asked the captain to help him apply for a unit. Diplomatic security, but the commander told him that one Vietnamese dong of his team was rightly sacrificed, so everyone will come to the barracks tonight for the funeral. The farewell ceremony, of course, could not be without his face and other soldiers chanting praises. The comrade who died when Jackson was heartbroken when he looked back at Rightly's portrait opposite the captain who ignored calls and texts asking for his troop referral. The veteran once again asked him to give himself a chance, but the captain frankly said that Jack had suffered a brain injury and was no longer fit for the army. Despite the guy rambling that many people were injured, still fighting. The tough captain told the yard trash that all the people he just mentioned had clear health certificates, and no one was on the list of forced leave like him. Even when the veteran fell to his knees just to ask for an opportunity to be introduced to the army, he still coldly left. However, the same captain woke up early the next morning and asked to return to the battalion to assign tasks. The male lead was very happy and excited when he was excitedly going through the security checkpoint to enter the battalion, when the paint spray was stopped by the guard because his military card was overdue for 6 months. Fortunately, the captain also just arrived and bailed out the veteran of the commando battalion, quickly drove inside and did not forget to show his middle finger in sarcasm. The Jackal Guard thanked the captain for thinking that he would be able to go with the team to Syria, where he had worked for 5 years before. However, the boss took the male lead to the place to arrange the equipment and asked about the preparation of the relics of the deceased soldier Rightly. Holding in his hand an album of memories of the deceased teammate and the male main dog, he couldn't help but ask about the fate of Riley's dog and seized this opportunity. The captain immediately declared, Jack Exxon will not be called back to the army, but will represent the whole Demurray battalion to wrestle with the dog back to Arizona to attend the funeral of Rightly. This mission is not as glorious as going to war, but it is not easy because the dog Rightly's career is seen as a beast ready to attack anyone. More importantly, Jack will have to drive his dog halfway around the country because this particular member doesn't like flights after funerals. Of the main male teammate will have to take this special dog to the White Sands. This is an organization that specializes in re-evaluating service dogs when they have problems. If he does this special job well, the male lead will be introduced by the captain to return to the army. Bringing the dog to the White Sands is tantamount to giving it a death sentence, because no trainer or police department will want to adopt a dog that is brought here without heartlessly sending the dog away with its owner. It should be the male lead suggested to hide it. But the captain said this would be detrimental to the battalion and he did not allow his former subordinates to do so. He emphasizes to the male lead that this dog has been trained to be a fearsome weapon, so he always will watch there in front of the dog lying sadly on the floor. The male lead seems to be a bit sad. He walked alone into the cage of the dog named Lulu and began to show his friendliness. Initially, the service dog proved to be quite docile and cooperative. But as soon as the veteran sarcastically, his comrades were afraid of this cute animal, it immediately rushed to attack. He has a lot of 5 years of experience serving on the battlefield, but even the Jack cannot beat this 4-legged character. The reason was because the veteran had touched Lulu's ear without knowing that he did not like it to tame the jackal, so he had to put it in a small cage and put it in the car. Having been told enough about ensuring water and food and other conditions to stay with the dog and the remaining belongings of his deceased comrade, Jackson set off in the hope of soon finished his mission and returned to the army, but Lulu quickly established himself as not one to compromise. It kept raising the small cage, forcing him to stop the car and open its muzzle. At the first stop, the male lead ignored the dog in the cage in the car and went alone to a roadside shop to practice shooting. At this time, Jack's spirit was not good, so he was forced to take medicine. What's even worse is that when the guy got back to the car, the dog broke the car dong and crushed everything in the car even though he was very angry, but he couldn't do anything about it, so he came up with a plan to buy a sedative to feed it. This way, the guy got a long way peacefully while singing and driving. The demon of destruction was lying on the floor of the car without reacting while it was lying obediently in the car. The veteran then enlisted in the pub and flirted with the girls here. Despite gossiping about everything in the sky and earth in the hope of earning a rich night, the paint jack was still ignored by the girls. Only then did he realize that he was no longer able to integrate into a normal life. He sadly went back to the car to confide in the dog Lulu, not expecting it to bring luck to this FA veteran because at this moment, two girls passing by saw him taking care of a pet, so they felt excited. The two girls invited the paint jack into the house and expressed their desire to transfer energy to the hot veteran. But when the veteran is surrounded by two girls with strange connection movements, it is time to always wake up and start messing around. Seeing the dog abandoned in the car, a passerby enthusiastically tried to release it. While the person assigned to take care of it is being stuck by two girls with the ritual of opening chakras and transferring energy. Before he could immerse himself in the pain-healing movements, he had to hurry back out because he discovered that someone was trying to break into the car to rescue the dog when he witnessed the beautiful scene that had always passed the road jaw its sharp teeth. The other two energy masters also had to run away in terror, leaving the guy to spend the night in the car with his dog. Every morning when he wakes up, the veteran has to take medicine to suppress his nerves. But this time when he was about to take his medicine, he always rushed to grab the water bottle, causing him to explode. The journey continued with endless stories about the battlefield and the army that the veteran had experienced. He admits he has epilepsy, but Jackson also believes the condition will not affect his return to the army. Meanwhile, the Lulu also suffers the sequelae of the wars it has fought or the losses it has experienced. Jock's son thinks that he always doesn't cooperate with people, just because he doesn't want to return to the battlefield. The car passed through a forest and the sniffer dog immediately showed his displeasure. It freed itself from the collar and jumped out of the car, causing the paint jack to almost hit the car coming from the opposite direction. Thanks to 5 years of training in the army, he can easily track this destructive dog. At the edge of the forest, he is always wounded and disappears from sight. So, the guy could only find the dog while finding his way. He got lost in a garden full of marijuana and was quickly discovered by a strange man who shot anesthetic at the body. "I'm tied up in a stable." An unknown man interrogated the male lead because he thought he was sent to investigate this place. After a while of cursing and criticizing him, he left without knowing that the opponent was a special forces soldier, so he could break free from the ropes easily. The story that followed made people cry out of disappointment because there was no hung-dung fight between the two sides. The fact that the corpse was drugged and tied up was only because the strange man was delusional due to being too high. When the male lead breaks into his house, he is unexpectedly warmly received by the man's wife. Meanwhile, Lulu is also here and has no intention of going back to her because she is very close to this woman thanks to the woman's spiritual support that she started to have. With more relaxed thoughts about his dog after resolving all misunderstandings with the two gardeners, the couple also had to leave to get to the funeral soon. Although the woman said that the dog was most likely a daughter from a previous life, reincarnated to search for paint, but he did not believe it because in this life he had a daughter, but due to his continuous military time, Sprinkle Paint and his wife is divorced. He himself was not allowed to be close to his children by his wife to make the journey more comfortable. Jackson had a bad idea to transform into a blind former soldier. He dressed the dog in a military uniform and groped his way into a luxury hotel. With such an appearance, the beautiful receptionist immediately expressed her gratitude to the two heroes who served the country equals free room promotion for both. Entering the room, he said a lot about his deceitful feet, but then he discovered his four-legged companion was not okay to help him relax. The veteran decided to give the dog a bath, but no matter how much he tried to comfort the dog, it still refused to step into the tub. Things are fine when she has to go to the bath with Lulu. This dog really knows how to make people obey when forcing the guy to take it out to dinner while the fake blind flirts with the receptionist when Lulu suddenly rushes to attack a Muslim doctor, causing the whole hotel was in chaos. For pretending to be a blind veteran and allowing dogs to attack people, Jackson was detained. The next morning, the guy was released to continue his journey to bring the dog to the funeral of his deceased comrade. Although Lulu caused a lot of trouble, thanks to that, he discovered that his four-legged friend was traumatized. The more I learn about Lulu, the more interesting it becomes to sprinkle paint because the dog has a lot in common with him. For example, the fact that both have relatives in Los Angeles. He decided to take the dog to meet their relatives, but things did not go well because his wife and children probably didn't really like the return of the two. Older brother. On the other hand, it received a warm welcome from its former owner and brother. The yard was taught by the dog's former owner how to connect with Lulu, but when he got back to the car, he discovered that there was only the right harness left thanks to Lulu's ability to track equals smell that they easily recovered the items. Lost from a vagabond. This incident made the paint garbage and his dog understand each other better. At the same time, the male lead also thinks of Los Angeles. The two continue to go on a predetermined journey in the night rain. The old car of Jack is repainted. He was so bad that he was forced to leave the car and always walk into a roadside warehouse. The falling thunder stimulated Lulu's nerves, causing it to aggressively rush into the Jack as if it wanted to fight. Turns out it was because he still wanted to keep moving, even when it was raining heavily. At the end of the fight, carrying paint and always making up equals how to stay in the barn, the dog seemed to feel the veteran's affection, so he also started to get closer to him. The next morning, both promptly attended the funeral of Brightness in a tattered appearance. The dog was dressed in military uniform and sat obediently next to the shoes of the deceased owner. This image made the people attending the funeral could not help but feel sad. At the end of the ceremony, the soldier handed over the relics of Jately to his family with attachment and heartache. Jack's duty was only to give the Whitesands to them to finish it off and avoid the trouble later. That's it. But the troubled journey with the dog has made the former soldier have a different view of it. He called the captain to ask if there was a way to prevent this four-legged friend from being sentenced to death, but only received threats. Even if the paint spray deliberately dropped the path, it still refused. Away, but resolutely jumped in the car with him. That night, a man and a dog took refuge in a rundown inn. At dawn the next morning, Jackson's seizures suddenly occurred, causing him to rush into the bathroom and collapse on the ground. It took a long time for the shock to pass. The doctor saw the dog about to receive the death sentence standing at him with worried eyes. He comforted the dog and then with it lay flat on the floor waiting for him to come. When it's morning, the miracle is that Lulu no longer hides from intimate gestures with the Jack. Even when he stroked its ears, the dog remained docile and undisturbed. According to military orders, the yard was sent to Guaysense, but when he saw it was tied around his neck to be brought inside, he couldn't help it. The veteran received the dog and gave up his military card. Sympathy after being traumatized by the war has made the two bond together. He decided to do the procedure to adopt this working dog that was considered a monster. In Lulu's file, the soldier left a confession admitting that the dog's companionship had saved his life. The movie ends here. Hello and see you all again.